Okay, hello everyone. Again, welcome to our webinar today. We're really excited to have the Executive Director of Technology Association of Grantmakers, or TAG, Jean Westrick, here today. And we're really excited to see about all the ways AI is evolving and really shaping the sector that we're in. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Jean.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. It is my honor. I'm excited to be talking about the thing that I seem to be talking about a lot these days, which is AI in philanthropy. So, with that, um, let's get started. Um, so thank you so much for that kind introduction. For folks who don't know, I am Jean Westrick. I am the executive director for TAG. I started at TAG just under 2 years ago. And previously, before joining TAG, I worked at the Chicago Community Trust, one of the oldest and largest community foundations in the country. And while I was at the trust, I wore many hats. Serving as in a program officer role to working on marketing and communications work, and then moving into operations and strategy and technology. Um, I've also worked at the Joyce Foundation, so I've had both a big private foundation experience as well as a community foundation experience. And that 2 decades of experience in philanthropy has really given me a unique understanding of the business side of philanthropy, the actual work that we do. And so I'm grateful to be lending that experience to this time we're in with regards to AI. Technology is essential for each and every one of us. And you don't need to just be the IT guy or gal in an organization to realize the role it plays on your work. It's how we do the business side of philanthropy, and it's also how we scale our impact. And so AI presents a huge opportunity for us to do both. For folks who aren't aware of TAG, we are a nonprofit membership association that promotes strategic, innovative, and equitable uses of technology within philanthropy in order to solve problems and improve lives. And so we have most of our membership is here in North America, but we actually have members in 8 countries across the globe. And so I'm grateful to be here to share some of the insights that we have. All right. Well, here's how we're going to spend our time today. We've already done the introductions. So I'm going to shift gears and really talk about AI and philanthropy. Getting started responsibly. We'll have an opportunity to do some interactives around building a business case. And then we'll leave you with a little roadmap and some considerations for next steps. Um, so again, if you are on the line and you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And I see some familiar names, so that makes me very happy. Um, so that's great. So let's get into it. Here is our learning objectives. I want folks to walk away with a better understanding of how AI is currently being used in philanthropy to identify those key considerations for your organization, learn how to develop a business case so that you can make the case for AI, um, and then think about the practical steps for your own organization. Okay, so what is AI? I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. And this is not where I'm going to be spending most of my time. This is just a very sort of thumbnail sketch. I want to underscore that the term to use AI, the terms that we use to describe AI are problematic in and of themselves. Artificial intelligence suggests something that we're making new creatures instead of new tools. Anthropomorphic terms like hallucinations, biological terms like neural networks really, I think, further this confusion. And language is really limiting. But the more we understand about AI, the more opportunities open up for us and the less anxiety we'll experience as well. So, with that, we want to sort of get into this space where we understand that, technology um, is really a disruptor, and it could be a disruptor for good or it can be a disruptor for bad. And it always has been that way. So just sort of zooming back out, just for a moment, I want to think about how technology has evolved and changed our work. So Web 1.0, as it's known, really sort of kicks off in the mid 90s. And Amazon in 1995, when I was a college freshman at Michigan State, um, it was launched publicly as a bookstore, an online bookstore. And now Amazon is so much more than a bookstore. It's embedded itself in everything from entertainment to our groceries to other types of things, web services. Amazon's reach is far-reaching. Google, same thing. It's more than a search engine. It powers so many organizations, and it has become so ubiquitous, it is now a verb. And so when you become a verb, you have embedded yourself in the culture deeply. But back in 1995, when I went off to Michigan State and I was had work study, I was setting up people with their first email address. And if we think about it, Web 1.0 really puts our missions online. It's the first time that we're able to build websites to share our impact. Instead of a printed brochure, annual report, we're able to connect through email marketing and such. That really enhanced our outreach and our communications. Web 2.0, which is really when social media sort of takes hold and user-generated content becomes the soup du jour, really launches in the early aughts with Facebook and Twitter. So in 2006, again, these are these social media places, which now they're more social marketing than ever, launched publicly. And the iPhone is also launched in 2007. So now we're taking mobility and then shifting organizations from that one-way messaging to two-way relationships that they could develop with their various stakeholders. It allows, peer-to-peer fundraising. And then also, too, it allows us to connect deeper with our stakeholders by using those various analytic tools to understand our audiences and those sorts of things. So it's really about building mission, building community around our mission, turning storytelling into a strategic component of our communication efforts. And as we get into the era of AI, whoops, OpenAI launches in late 2022. We're now getting where AI is allowing us to understand and amplify our impact. So regardless of the technology, AI is just the latest. It is a disruptor in the way in which we deliver our work. And so it's important for us to think about the implications. But AI is not new. It goes back to the 1950s. The term AI was actually coined at a conference that was sponsored by Rockefeller Foundation in 1956 called the Dartmouth Conference. And that's where the term artificial intelligence was coined. Um, uh, it it has evolved a lot since. So if you see here this first little picture, um, that is an IBM machine learning expert, an IBM employee named Arthur Samuel, who invented a computer game that was capable of learning from its mistakes so that it could actually play against a human. And then we get Deep Blue, which happens in the mid 1990s, which did something that no machine had ever been done before. It beat the leading reigning chess champion, Garry Kasparov, in a test tournament. And now we're here in Gen AI. So simply put, I like to think about AI in these two terms. It's predictive or generative. Predictive is really about the computer's ability to mimic human cognition. It does not think, but it's able to learn from data, the patterns in data. That's what it's looking for. So it's predictive. So this is useful when we're doing forecasting for the weather or all sorts of things where data can help us really anticipate what the future might hold. Generative is where we're using patterns of data, but we're using that patterns of data in order to actually generate new data. And so this could be anything from written content, it could be computer code, it could be audio or visual images. At their foundation, they both use machine learning. However, generative turns the learning outputs into those content pieces. And so that is a very simple gauge of thinking about what is AI. So, how's it being used in philanthropy? Um, it's being used in these four ways. Individual use, and this is really where it's primarily being used, where we're having individual staff who are using publicly available AI tools, and they're using them in order to do their work faster, more efficiently. So it's using ChatGPT or another public large language model to craft an email or to summarize a report or something of the nature. Organizational efficiencies are tools that have been provisioned, whereas individual tools are usually not provisioned by the organization. And they are also about efficiency and saving time and streamlining processes. So it could be things like turning on the Zoom transcription services or something of the nature so that you can make your job easier. Mission attainment, those would be customized tools or built tools that are about discovery, insights, supporting fundraising efforts, those types of things where you're looking for new ways of doing the work, not just faster, but new ways of doing the work that open up new business. Nonprofit enablement, I want to mention this because there's already a tech equity gap in the space. The majority of nonprofits, over 90%, have budgets of $1 million or less per year. And so with any new technology, um, the disruptions could be for good or could be for negative effects too. And we want to just be mindful of the fact that resources, there's a real resource need in the nonprofit community. And certainly AI could hasten or worsen a tech equity gap. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but I do want to mention it because it is, I think it's important as we're speaking to a whole group of funders. So, um, what does the data say? Uh, in late last year, we released our State of Philanthropy Tech Survey, and we asked a few questions about how folks were leveraging AI, how they were governing AI, what ways are they using it, what solutions are they applying, and what are the barriers to adoption. And here's what we learned. Um, as you can see here, the majority of adoption is really on individuals who are leveraging AI. Um, uh, about 20%, 1 in 5, report no AI usage. But we're seeing it lead in individual adoption. Um, there are a handful of foundations, and I think this is still the case a year on as I speak to a lot of groups that are using AI enterprise-wide. Um, Most organizations are really trying to figure out where the best places are to implement AI. But 2/3 of individuals are experimenting. When we asked about governance and asked about their AI policy, we have an almost inverted data chart here. 2/3 of foundations report that they have neither a policy nor do they have any advisory committee internally that's helping guide their usage. And so this is a real opportunity for us. And there's a certain responsibility that we have with using these tools. And organizations really need to provide staff with clear guidance about what tools are appropriate and what kinds of use cases are appropriate too. I will say, I didn't pull the slide data here, but 55% of foundations report that they do not have a data governance policy. And so if you're thinking about your AI policy, it really goes hand in hand with your data governance policy, understanding what data you have in your organization, who has access to that data, where is it stored, which data is confidential. That's really important so that you know that what kinds of data can be used within these systems. When we ask grant makers who are using AI how they're using it, I will say the use cases are not radical. They're pretty germane. They're pretty basic. 71% report that they're using AI for meeting transcriptions or generating meeting summaries because it's easy. You're in Zoom, you can turn on the meeting companion. 67% report that they're using AI for drafting reports or emails. And so that those two are the leading use cases, which are not particularly innovative. I will say, and I'm grateful for this, only 2% report using AI for making grant making decisions. And I think that that is really the right decision at this point. Um, you don't want to outsource AI to the things that are unique to your mission and critical to your mission. You want to make sure you have a human in the loop and you're not outsourcing some of that important decision making. Um, Solutions used by grant makers, again, not particularly surprising. Um, 61% report using free ChatGPT. That's the most common. I will say that I think that there's an opportunity here as well, just because of data, and you want to make sure that your data is not being used on some publicly available platforms. But again, we're not seeing particularly unique experiences here. Copilot, if you are a Microsoft shop, Copilot is pretty much comes with it. And that could be a real savings of time and effort. The barriers to adopting are here. And this was a select all that apply, but as you can see, data and privacy concerns was the number one barrier, followed by lack of AI skills and unsure of particular use cases. Bias and unfairness in AI solutions also tops out those top four. If you look at this, this tells me that knowledge, like skills and knowledge gap, and a data challenge are the two biggest sort of barriers, data and knowledge. And so if you're thinking about your own AI experience in your own organization, those would be two places where you'd want to start thinking about whether or not you have the right infrastructure, skills, opportunities to really reduce those barriers. So what does this mean for enterprise adoption? Um, this is a slide that I put together because I wanted to really just level set where we are as a sector and also to help people unpack what would it take to leverage AI in a more sophisticated way. We're right here in level one AI. This is really about prompting. So going into a ChatGPT or into a platform and putting in an input and waiting for an output, a generated AI output. And the real need here in order to do that is really prompting skills, knowing how to craft a good prompt in order to get a good result. In order for us to really be able to leverage AI in a manner that makes it unique to our own business models, our own needs, um, what that means is we're going to need the retrieval systems that are in those AI large language models to be able to produce that data that is unique to our own context. And that really means investing in data infrastructure and making sure that we have a data strategy that's making sure that when we're using that retrieval, that it's pulling the data that is the most important to us. And that's when we would get into enterprise solutions. So thinking about this, like if you wanted to create a chat bot on your website that was going to provide answers to FAQs or something of the nature, you're going to need to make sure that that data is available and that your system is pointing at that data. Saved workflows, if we want to think about automation, these next few boxes are about automation. We're going to need to make sure that we have defined, repeatable actions or workflows. So understanding what the chunks of the work are, because that's how you're going to be able to build those systems for automation. So saved workflows is level 3. Saved level 4 is where we're having tools where they're creating multiple workflows in order to be able to create some sort of output of some sort. And that's really where you're not just understanding the work, you're understanding how it aligns to your business objectives and your needs. Level 5, a lot of folks have been talking about AI agents. That's where your AI systems are automated and they're making decisions and learning from those situations and being able to differentiate. Um, that's where you're not only going to have to understand the workflows and the business objectives, but you're going to have to train that model and fine tune that model. These last three buckets, they're a far ways off. Most organizations would need more investment in order to get to AI agents. They really need to understand your work and where there's going to be an opportunity to leverage AI in a way that's safe and responsible. So we do have a lot of work. If that is the goal, there's a lot of infrastructure and investment that needs to be made in order to make that possible. What I will say is along the bottom here, your governance, the way in which you govern AI will evolve and change depending on how you're using AI. And so as it becomes more sophisticated, your AI governance should evolve with that. And so for organizations that don't have an AI policy, it's okay not to have one now. Um, but to develop something that meets your needs at the moment and know that you can evolve it over time. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good, as they say. You really want to be able to start somewhere and build upon it. Okay. So I want to just look at the chat to see if there's any questions here in the chat. And feel free to put questions here, or if you are interested in popping off, please stop me. So, considerations for getting started responsibly. Um, just about 2 years ago, TAG released its framework for responsible AI adoption. And regardless of usage, whether you're individually adopting as an organization, or thinking about mission-related opportunities, it's important that grant makers explore 3 buckets of consideration as part of their decision-making process. So thinking about your organizational considerations, these are really the change management strategy, really thinking about the humans and what they need in order to support the change. Ethical considerations, to some degree, these are really about the data and understanding how you're going to, what data is available, what data can be used, and how you're going to protect and safeguard that data. The last consideration is technical. And that really should be your last, is once you've figured out your strategy, is making sure that you're then thinking about the vendor and the kinds of tools you need for that. One thing I will say with all of these considerations, these are not for the IT guy to figure out and sort out. These are organizational challenges, and you need to have a broad coalition of folks who are working across the organization who are wrestling with these and evolving as needed. In order for us to ensure that AI is human-centered, it requires us to actively listen to our stakeholders and think about these considerations from a variety of perspectives. So making sure that there are staff and leadership and grantees reflective in your strategy is really important. I will also say, as I alluded to on the previous slide, that AI usage is an iterative process. And if you start with one pilot project, you are going to continue to evolve your strategy over time. And therefore, you're going to need to evolve your governance and your other types of approaches as well. The framework is meant to be iterative. That's why it's a circle, because this is not a one and done. It is something that is a continuous experience. So let's dig into some of the organizational considerations. So organizational considerations are really about centering humans throughout the AI adoption process. And it really begins with building awareness across the organization engaging a diverse group of stakeholders to work alongside, technical staff, and supporting their ability to change, to adopt change, is an important part of this space. So, in the awareness and engagement piece, this is about thinking about finding those early adopters. If you don't have, these are the early adopters among staff. So this might be either those folks who are already, your tech savvy folks, who are eager to get started. But I would also say find folks who may be tech more skeptics or maybe a little less comfortable in using technology, because you're going to learn a lot from those early adopters because they're going to help you experiment with tools and give you great feedback. Yes, the next piece is really creating that two-way learning process, understanding how you're experimenting with AI and what you're learning from those different systems. As you move to more organizational wide enterprise usage, you want to incorporate staff and where appropriate, maybe grantees as well, in the selection of the tools and really understanding the diversity of the kinds of roles and the diversity of the kinds of needs and comfort level with technology. So this really has to be a tool that we can harness, not the other way around. So we want to make sure that we're empowering our staff and our teammates to be part of making the decisions. Um, so those are things that you have to think about with regards to awareness and engagement. The other thing I will say is that AI comes fraught with a lot of anxiety. If you were the person who used to take the meeting notes and now all of a sudden you're using your Zoom companion to take the meeting notes, for you, that could be a real point of anxiety. And so it's really important to have internal conversations about how this is going to inform your policies and practices and anticipated labor shifts in labor within your organization. So how might work be reallocated or jobs be redesigned? Um, and that is really that's a difficult conversation for folks to have, but it's really important that you do that in community with stakeholders who are impacted. It's also really clear to set the guidelines around which processes will AI not be able to replace at an organization. I would urge you the things that make your mission the secret sauce, don't outsource that to AI. You want to make sure there's always a human in the loop, but there might be things that are differentiators that really do need humans to do that work. And so make sure that you're prioritizing that in your strategy. Um, it's as important as all of the change management, it really is about communication and it's about engagement. And so making sure you're having an internal communication plan to make sure that you're understanding how and why AI is being used and how does it align with your values, and being able to clearly articulate that is really important. I'm looking to see if there's any comments in the chat. If there's any questions, feel free to try to get my attention. I'm happy to stop. When we get into ethical questions, as alluded to the top, this is about really thinking about your own values, what places and cases AI could align and support your mission and values, and that's really important. So, one of the biggest things that what we know is when we're investing in the upgrades or development of our tools, that privacy, bias, and transparency are going to need to be ongoing practices to make sure that we're putting tools in place that work as planned and safeguard against those risks. So that is really important. Policies are really key. So if you don't have an AI use policy, as 2/3 of organizations mention that they don't, it's really important to create them. If you're a member of TAG, we have a number of peer organizations that have shared their AI policy in our Knowledge Center. That's a good place to start. But it's also good to start with your data policy And as I said, more than half of organizations do not have a data governance nor a data retention policy in place. And so it's really important to understand what data is unique and important for our work, who has access to that data, how do we store it, how do we protect it. All of those sorts of questions are really important. So then you can start understanding how that data might be able to be leveraged within your AI strategy. Because there may be certain situations where you never want to have AI involved in that process. So that is all part of thinking about your ethics. So as you think about moving to more organizational wide usage, you want to make sure staff are aware of the policies and the guidelines so that you have to have a policy and people need to know how to follow it. So that is important. Um, it's really also important to make sure that we're thinking about the impact of AI on our work in alignment with our values. AI, for example, uses a tremendous amount of environmental resources. And so you may, if you're an organization that funds in that area, may want to limit the use of AI in certain situations. Um, so I think that this is something to wrestle with as you're thinking about your ethical considerations. Um, I think I've covered most of this. It's really important to also identify when AI is not the solution. And so, for example, you may say that we're going to record project related meetings, but we're not going to record any HR or board meetings or something where there might be sensitive information being shared. And you want people to be able to talk freely without being recorded. That's something that you should be thinking about as you're understanding your AI policy. Um, Another thing I will say is that you want to make sure that people are able to opt out of AI. I'm sure that we've all had this experience where we have called a customer service line and then got an automated, um, you know, response, like an operator, robot operator, who you can't get out of this loop that you're supposed to getting some information about your account and you're stuck. That is really a very bad brand experience. And you do not want to make sure that you're outsourcing opportunities for AI and putting a barrier between you and your grantees or your stakeholders. So giving people the opportunity to opt out of data collection or opt out of AI systems is really important. And then finally, human in the loop. Everything that you produce with AI, you're responsible for. And so you want to make sure that you're evaluating it and checking that. Uh, all right. So the last considerations are really technical. I will say this should be the last wedge you focus on. Within the technical considerations, you want to pick vendors who are aligned with your values and who understand your needs for security, and they can prioritize that. That's really important. Um, as part of your evaluation of those vendors, you want to understand um, what their data policies are and what yours are, and can they adhere to those? Um, you also may want to be able to evaluate vendors based upon like how reliable they are and conducting your own due diligence in that regard. If there are vendors that you don't want to work with or different platforms, make sure that's very clear. Maybe in some organizations, you want to prohibit the use of certain AI tools. That's totally within your strategy, and that's something you should be considering. Um, I think additionally, as you're thinking about your vendor selection, beyond risk and ability and their approaches and adherence to data privacy, you want to think about uh, vendors who value a diverse workforce, who take AI safety very seriously. Are they transparent about the models that they're using and what data that they're training those models on? And so making sure that you're being very clear about ownership and whether or not your data is going to be used for training or product enhancement. So those are the kinds of questions that you want to ask as you're thinking about AI tools. I will say there are tons of grants management systems that are putting AI right into their tech stack right now. And so you might already have some of these available, and it would be important to just ask your vendors about the usage. Um, if if you have the investment and have the ability, you may want to consider your own private LLM, and being able to curate that data that's from your own system, and that way you can support it and make sure that it's safely stored. Okay. So making a business case. I feel like I've talked a lot, so I'm hoping that folks will be uh, willing to share. Um, One of the things is people want to talk about technology a lot, and they want me to talk about technology, and I often push off on that and say, let's talk about the problems that we're trying to solve. Let's talk about the people involved. Because if we chase a tool, we're not going to actually find the solutions that are going to be best suited for us. And so it's really important for you to understand how AI aligns with your own organizational goals. And so when you're thinking about how we're going to use AI, it's really important to think about how it directly links to your needs and your objectives. So that's the first thing, is really making sure it's aligned with your goal. AI really has three purposes. It can boost productivity, make things faster, more efficient. It can enhance service delivery, and this is an efficiency purpose as well, except it has a transactional component to it, meaning that um, that for example, if you're going to respond to inquiries and you're now going to outsource that to a chat bot who's going to help folks with frequently asked questions, um, you're going to have that's an efficiency as well, making it easier for people to get the access to the information, and reducing the burden on your team members who have to answer the phone and answer those questions. AI to advance impact objectives, that's the big piece that everybody wants to unlock, is really understanding how we might be able to deepen our impacts, to scale our impact. And that is going to be more customized approaches. But it's really understanding, like, what are we trying to do here as an organization, and where might there be opportunities to leverage AI that helps us advance that goal. The benefits are really saving time, reducing effort, and increasing impact. So as you're thinking about your business case and wanting to scaffold it, you want to keep that in mind. We asked grant makers, and I crowdsourced this from about 300 grant makers. This is a sampling of that, of how do they want to use AI. And so if you're not sure where to start, here's some examples of how funders like yourself are already thinking about AI. So there are folks who want to summarize those grant reports into a standardized format. It takes a lot of time to write those summaries and be able to present them in those pithy summaries in a way that allows reviewers or board members to make decisions and get the information. So that could be a really good use case. You might want to think about streamlining data processing or data work. If you're having all of these different formats and you want to put it into a nice, clean format, that is also a way of streamlining the work. Creating a marketing campaign. If folks are using tools like Canva, you don't need to have Photoshop skills or design skills. You can create some pretty beautiful marketing materials with pretty limited skills using AI. The last two here I mentioned are part of grant management systems. So pre-populating application fields, screening applications based upon a set of criteria. So allowing organizations to really leverage what AI is really good at, which is reading that information and being able to organize it efficiently. When we think about enhancing service delivery, think about things like automating commonly answered questions or creating email templates for grantees depending on their different situations. Maybe it's reminders about uh, their grant reports or some other information where you're going to need to customize that. Um, Onboarding employees. So rather than rely upon the HR staff, you might want to create a chatbot on top of your intranet to allow folks to access HR forms and other HR information really easily. The last bullet here, auto translations of RFPs across multiple languages. Generative AI, large language models, languages is something that it does really well. Um, Back when I worked at the Chicago Community Trust and we translate into Spanish and Polish, we'd send those out to translators. It would take a week or so. Then we'd have to bring them in-house in order to make sure that they were on brand and that the language aligned to our guidelines. Um, uh, Generative AI does this really quickly. I would still say you still want them to be read by somebody who is a native speaker on your staff who understands your brand language, but you could save a lot of time and money by translating RFPs or other information into multiple languages using AI. Impact objectives, thinking about analyzing unstructured data. So this opens up opportunities for trust-based philanthropy, allowing grantees to be able to submit grant reports in a variety of formats. So it's not just a form, it could be a recorded interview, it could be transcripts from a note, and being able to analyze and take all that data that's not in a single format and being able to synthesize it. That's great. Um, the last bullet here, if folks have not heard, McGovern has actually launched a tool called Grant Guardian, and that is to help conduct due diligence on the financial health of organizations. And so that tool is available for foundations. I think it's freely available. So if you want more information, you can go to McGovern, the McGovern Foundation and learn more. But that's another tool that maybe your program officers haven't always felt comfortable reading those financial statements. And so this tool can allow folks to get that analysis to help augment where there might be skills gaps. Um, all right. So when we're thinking about AI, I really want to just sort of set this up is that I say the most important thing is watching your P's and Q's. Change is an external thing. It's something that happens to you. Well, change management is the strategy that you do in order to deal with that change. And so in order to really align your AI strategy, you've got to watch your P's and Q's. So that's my little fun play on words. Stay focused on your purpose, not the tool. Um, that's your North Star. You want to really make sure that your strategy, your mission, values, they're aligned. And that's bigger than the issue you're trying to solve for. It's aspirational and it's trying to align to your organizational goals. The problem, the next P in this P's and Q's pyramid, is really the challenge you're trying to solve. So having a really compelling question and being able to line that up. The P essentials and the people are the people who are involved, who's impacted by this challenge, who's going to benefit, how are they going to benefit, understanding who they're involved, and making sure that they're part of the process is really important. The P essentials, the platform, the policies, the procedures, the tools, those are all the solutioning components of this. Like what is part of the solution? And then finally, your partners are going to help you maintain that change in place. So as you're thinking about AI, you really should be thinking about a change management strategy aligning with it. Like how do we adopt and do this in a way that is useful? Thank you for sharing that link to the Grant Guardian tool. So I would like to offer this opportunity for folks to come off of mute and share either how you want to use AI or how you're using it right now. Do we have any folks on the line here who would be willing to share their problem statement with this group? And as you can see, I've just put together what I call like a Mad Lib. So if you are trying to put together your business case, you want to really understand who is impacted. So in this case, the grants manager. What is the use case? As a grants manager, I want to automatically respond to frequently asked grant inquiries. And then the to what end or the reason? It's so that grant seekers can get timely, accurate information 24/7 to help them with their application. So your grants manager is only available 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. But often nonprofits are filling out those applications after hours or on the weekends. And so you want them to be able to have access to the information um, when they need it. And so this could be a really good AI tool if that made sense to you. Any other ideas or any other suggestions or needs?
And if the recording is throwing people off, I'm going to pause it just in case, or we'll pause the recording right now.
If you're not really, if you're not sure where to start with AI, here are 4 areas within your organization. I would say, regardless of the size of your foundation, every organization who's a funder has these functions. And these are areas where you can consider AI adoption where that might be able to help. So we've talked a little bit about grants management and helping with write-up recommendations and streamlining the application process. I would say ask your grants management platform, your GMS provider, what AI is already germane or inherent to the system. How does it work? And what other AI enhancements are they planning? Because again, there might be something that they're developing, but it's not going to be ready for 6 months. And that would at least allow you to develop your change management strategy and think about how you might want to use it without having to invest in building something. It might be built for you. Um, Marketing, communication, donor engagement. These are all areas where, again, AI is really good at allowing us to develop brand language, brand voice, and being able to personalize some of that outreach to stakeholders. And you can also use AI to analyze your engagement data so you can better target that information. Again, I would say do not put personal identifiable information into an AI system. But this could be a great way to get started with some of those tools. The last 2, reducing administrative burdens, and then finally, data-driven decision making. So being able to identify those trends or being able to identify gaps. This is another way that AI is a really good tool in helping analyze lots of different data. You again want to make sure that you're thinking about ways in which you can validate that data or the outputs. I wanted to share a few inspirational ideas of ways in which, and these are all custom tools. Um, so Um, Crisis Text Hotline has used AI to essentially triage incoming messages, and this will allow them to prioritize those messages that are from folks who are at most at risk for self-harm, and could pair them with a counselor best equipped to address their inherent needs at those moments. Um, Trevor Project, which is also provides crisis counseling, but for the LGBTQ youth community, they actually have used AI to train counselors. So they've taken those text messages that they get from their crisis text hotline, and then de-identified that information, removing all the identifiers of those text messages, but then using it to create a model that's a training model that allows would-be counselors to simulate a real life crisis training moment. Um, Feeding America uses AI in order to predict and analyze supply chain. And so they have over 200 food banks. And so making sure that they're able to leverage where there might be need and be able to optimize that supply chain is a way in which they're using predictive analytics in their work. UNICEF and American Red Cross are both using multiple data sources in order to analyze and forecast where there might be a disease outbreak or a natural disaster and how you might be able to respond quicker. And so both of them are using multiple ways in which they're taking in a lot of information and using that predictive modeling in order to best direct their response. And then every town it works to promote gun safety. Um, One of the things that they have done is they've actually created an AI tool to analyze media data. Um, Getting access to really good gun violence prevention data is hard. Data sets are usually 2 years old. And what they're using as a proxy for waiting on that data set is essentially screening media data in order to track those gun deaths, dedupe any shootings that appear in the news, so that they are calculating that, and then identifying any of the surrounding details with that gun death or that gun violence incidents. So were there multiple people involved? What kinds of gun was involved? The kinds of considerations and the context in which that gun violence occurred allows them to respond and see if there are patterns or things that are emerging. So is there an uptick of toddlers who get access to guns that are not securely stored and in safe storage? So that might inform ways in which they want to put out advocacy and other intervention strategies into the community to help prevent gun deaths. So you could see how that might be a way of evaluating if there are edge cases out there where you might want to do some deeper research or deeper work. It could help you in that regard. So I think all of these are really interesting ways of thinking about AI's possibility, um, and how some of these might even apply to your own space and place. I see that there's a question here in the chat. If we have another question, at what point would you recommend an organization start investing in an enterprise license? If our staff is already using ChatGPT, does it make more sense as an organization to invest in collecting all of our data into one area? I do think that yes, you should consider an enterprise license. So again, thinking about that knowledge transfer and that institutional knowledge that you're building through those models. I also would say that you want to make sure you're paying for the license. You're able to put some of the controls and the safeguards into it. So that's another reason why you might want to invest in an enterprise license. Um, the I think the very first step is really investigating what tools folks are using already or which tools that they would like to use. As we know, Amazon is really convenient. And so folks are going to use these tools. So it would be better to try to address what people need and want and then build a strategy that does it safely and responsibly than just allow the wild west of AI adoption to occur.
And if we use an enterprise model, sorry, that was my question, are we then able to input more sensitive data unlike ChatGPT?
Um, I would say never put any identifiable information into a system.
Okay. Okay.
So I would never put anybody's name or personally identifiable name into that. But these tools are great to get a first draft, and then you can customize them accordingly. But there are better protections, better ways that you can put safeguards if you've got an enterprise or a paid license. Okay, so what should you do now? Um, Set guardrails for responsible use. So if the first thing I would say is review your data governance policy. And make sure that you have an AI policy that meets your needs where you're at. So being able to survey how staff are using AI now, how they would like to use, that'll help you identify that. And I think it's really important that this exists across the organization. It can't just exist in one part of the organization. It has to be across the whole entire organization. So there's that cross-functional ownership around your strategy. Again, strategy, making sure you're starting with a real problem, a real pain point, a real opportunity. That's the best place to start, and start small. You don't have to solve the whole puzzle in one go, but start with the biggest pain points, the things that are the most vexing with your work, and then you can build out from there. TAGS framework is a good place to start, but there are other frameworks too that you might want to explore. And then think about the considerations in your organizational needs so you can tailor your approach accordingly. Change management. Lots of folks are going and taking it upon themselves to get their own AI training. I would urge organizations to invest in staff training so that we're not only just building the awareness, but we're developing the skills and creating that feedback loop so that you're learning from folks as they're learning more about AI and developing their own AI skills. And finally, data. Data is the liquid gold. It is the thing that powers our missions. And so your data is really important. And so making sure that we have a strong data culture throughout the organization so that we can manage and maintain that data because your data assets are organizational assets. They're valuable. And so we want to make sure that we're protecting them and we're treating them appropriately. Little shameless plug. So TAG and N10 partnered up to create an on-demand digital professional certificate. It's a choose your own adventure. You can get a certificate by taking as many of these modules as you would like. Um, and they're all 1 hour. You can take them asynchronistically and take whatever uh, uh, module makes sense for you and your needs. And finally, we're going to be in Atlanta. So if you are a TAG member, I hope to see you there. We are now currently sold out, but we're really going to be digging into this time and space that we're dealing with a lot of change and navigating that with resiliency and purpose. And so I hope to see some of you there. If you would like more, you can find more TAG related AI tools on tagtech.org/AI. Our framework is there. That's free to use. It's not behind the paywall. You do not need to be a TAG member to access it. But there's also some other tools there too.